All right, we love talking Ohio State football with Claire Crawford. You can join her on theozone.net. Her podcast with Joe Dexter is Oh Hail No. And Claire, how you doing tonight?
I am doing so well. Much better.
Yeah, what a difference a week makes, even though it is Army. Ohio State can't do anything about the opponent, and the criticism will continue until they face somebody at or near their level that they can take out and gain back some confidence and gain back some swag and some national acclaim and respect. But that's not going to happen for several weeks. So we can only go by the results on the field and the performance. So at 38-7 against Army, one thing of note was it was a bit frustrating for Ohio State on offense. Uh, to at one point give up the ball. I think early second quarter, Army went on a 99-yard offensive drive. They took over the football to start the second half. Ohio State didn't have the ball forever, and they're trying to work on the offense. They're trying to improve the offense. They're trying to put up big numbers to get people off their backs, and just didn't have the football. So 38-7, rather underwhelming, but the team did what it needed to do, and it looked decent.
They can definitely consider this a bounce back. They can consider it a confidence builder. They can consider it something to build on. And that's all they need to do right now is to get better every week. And if that translates into a win, then that's the ultimate goal. Watching improvements they've made, watching not the same mistakes happening over and over again. And it's difficult to see some of those mistakes happening again, specifically in the secondary, but we also saw some improved secondary play as well. And it's hard as a fan, you want to get your hopes up and think things are kind of shored up, but you don't really know with an inferior opponent what really is going on, whether it's just Ohio State's talent level overcoming armies or not. And I will say this, because I don't think we got to mention it last week. I obviously have the utmost respect for our service members and those who have served, and I do a lot of work in that community. So I don't think we got to say it last week, so I'll say it this week. And I appreciate everything they do and have done for our freedom.
So that's definitely worth noting, and I'll take it in the football direction. I am amazed. So I'm amazed at Stanford to a particular degree because of the academic standards and that they're able to field a football team typically rated in the top 10 or 15 in the nation. Okay, put that aside. I'm even more amazed, impressed by the military academies who field these football teams that are outmanned physically. They have weight restrictions. They have obvious academic requirements and military requirements that are so much higher and more important and of a greater priority. And football is like a third or fourth priority for these kids. And they go out and they schedule the likes of Ohio State and a number of other teams that are so much more talented, kids going to the NFL, and they compete and they win some of these games, not against maybe Ohio State, but they beat top 25 teams at times. And I'm talking Air Force, Navy, and Army. And it just amazes me that they can be that good on the football field based on just not that they don't have talent, because they do, but fundamentals, being in the right place at the right time, discipline and grit and effort, and they can compete at the highest level of football despite their mindset having to be somewhere else most of the week. It's amazing.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And it's it's difficult because, we obviously owe them a great debt of gratitude as far as a debt that we could never repay. And the coaches get flack for scheduling these games. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't, because they're saying, you're scheduling Army, or they're either, saying that, it's a cupcake or however. I don't think anybody's going to call anyone in the Army a cupcake to their face.
I hope
Uh,
not. They need
no,
to be
they better
called.
not.
They need to be called out for that and have to be accountable for that statement and make it in front of actually somebody in the military.
Exactly, preferably a ranger. But there are also people that complained in the fan base that this triple option was kind of crazy amidst the schedule to have to prepare for, and it just didn't make any sense. When in reality, that's not something that they're going to be taken into consideration. It's a non-conference game. It's good for everyone. And as you can see, I think the first thing I noticed as far as Ohio State was concerned is the offense getting off to a faster start. It ended up slowing down. And I think that Kevin Wilson, like we talked about last week, with this tempo offense, knowing that Army was going to want to chew up big chunks of the clock with this triple option, that they might have to slow it down a little bit. And it looks like they controlled the tempo a little bit. I wouldn't say slowed it down all the way, but they certainly did after they put a few points on the board.
So it was really telling early in the game, and we talked about this last week, what the approach would be offensively. So you're facing Oklahoma and you don't look good, and there are issues that have persisted now for 7 or 8 games going back to last year. Now you face Army, and no, you're not going to be able to prove to people that, oh, we fixed the offense because we just hung up 55 points on Army. That's not going to be accomplished. But what would be the approach to analyzing the issues? Would it be just, we're seeing the same plays, the same approach, the same scheme, so apparently they think the players aren't executing, and they've worked on execution this week in practice? Or they're thinking, hey, we're getting beat as coaches, and we were shown up last week against Oklahoma. We have to show some new wrinkles and do some different things with some different personnel. I think there was a combination of that, and I know that you had some really good observations in regards to wide receiver play.
I do, and I completely agree. I think that specifically against Oklahoma, we saw, like you and I mentioned, poor linebacker play, or not playing assignment football, or blown coverages. So that's something where we can say, hey, the players didn't execute. We can blame that on the players. And then as far as scheming is concerned, as far from the defensive standpoint about certain blitzes that did or didn't happen, and then obviously from the offensive side, not being as creative as we think they can be. But certainly on the wide receiver side against Army, we were able to see quite a few guys not only get some playing time, but really start making an impact. KJ Hill had a great game. It's somebody that we wanted to see step up, specifically since Paris Campbell has been coached to be one of the most dynamic playmakers on this offense. I would argue that J.K. Dobbins is, but Paris Campbell has a very important position in Urban Meyer's offense, and he also had a very great day. JT overthrew him early on, or else I think he could have made a bigger impact.
Yeah, you mentioned the linebacking play, the defensive secondary coming under criticism, starting with the Indiana game and then against Oklahoma, and only really ardent observers, I typically don't use that word, but it just came out, ardent observers of Ohio State football noticed that the linebacker core in coverage was lost for much of the Oklahoma game. Now, unfortunately, because of the way Army runs an offense, we weren't able to see whether that was shored up. Another amazing aspect of Army football, and I saw it earlier in the day watching Air Force take on Michigan, is that Air Force really pushed Michigan to the hilt, talking about service academies playing some of the best talent in the country and taking them to the wire. They really pushed Michigan. They didn't throw a pass until the third quarter. Army threw it 7 times. So on one side, in terms of looking at the football aspect, we weren't able to rate Ohio State in pass coverage much. On the other hand, it's just another impressive aspect of the perspective that Army's able to compete without throwing the football downfield or do it much. Very interesting. All right, Claire Crawford, theozone.net. Please join her there and her podcast with Joe Dexter. Oh, hail no, each and every week, talking Buckeyes through and through. All right, JT Barrett, much criticism there. He is the all-time touchdown record holder in the Big Ten over a guy that we see on Sundays still here 17, 18 years later, and we will see one day inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame on the first ballot, Drew Brees. still he's much criticized. And I'm not making a parallel between accomplishments and compiling stats and effective play, because JT Barrett has obviously had his issues. We don't know a whole lot about what JT felt or thought about the Oklahoma experience because he wasn't allowed to talk to anybody, Claire.
That was definitely interesting this week. And Urban Meyer talks about how mentally tough JT is and how he's such a leader of this team, when there are signs, if you're paying close enough attention, that Urban is definitely protecting JT to a certain point from the onslaught of pressure. And Urban is a great coach. Urban is a great leader. Urban is almost like a father figure to some of these guys. And you've seen Urban have ongoing relationships with a lot of his players, Tim Tebow specifically, because they develop these great relationships. And obviously, Urban has to have a lot of trust in JT. However, JT not being able to speak to the media this week, to me personally, gave me a sign that JT definitely wasn't as mentally ready to take that onslaught as maybe he should be. Maybe JT was and Urban didn't think he was, or just didn't want to test that theory. But the outcome of that is that, in my opinion, we saw JT more comfortable getting flushed out of the pocket or making better decisions in the run pass option, making better reads. We still didn't see him throw downfield like we thought he should. There were a couple big overthrows, but in general, and to his defense, he didn't take but maybe just a handful of shots, and literally maybe 5 or 6 shots downfield, but had the opportunity to do so and didn't quite get there. It wasn't a huge part of the offensive scheme, obviously, if they're not taking the shots, but it's those type of plays are going to get him some more confidence. And I think if anything that the Buckeyes can hang their hat on this week, it is just building confidence. And that's one thing that we can't measure going forward as fans. We can't really say, oh, they definitely are more confident, because that's between the coaches and the receivers and the quarterbacks. But it is something that they will have a measurable outcome of when we start seeing more connections.
So to take it from a football standpoint, I know that we're speaking to a lot of people out there that watch Ohio State football and just soak in nothing but Ohio State football all the time. Watch some other college football games. Even the best quarterbacks in the nation miss on throws. JT went 25 for 33 in this game. I don't remember any specific dropped passes, so let's say he went a legitimate 25 for 33. I also don't remember any guys just laying out, making incredible catches off the top of my head. So he basically went 25 for 33 in this game. Yeah, he missed on some throws. I'm just trying to point out that if you watch college football across the country, Sam Darnold in particular, who myself and others think is the best quarterback in the nation, he missed throws last night against Texas. So nobody's perfect out there. So if you're concentrated on just watching Ohio State football and nitpicking every little thing, you're going to find some flaws in this team. Obviously, we've already seen them against Oklahoma, but there are no perfect teams out there. They all have flaws and issues. From the standpoint of JT speaking to the media, the only thing that troubles me, and I'll not take this to an extreme because Urban Meyer knows his program, he knows his player, and he knows how JT needs to be handled. If JT was, let's say, back in 2014 as a redshirt freshman, and this was post-Virginia Tech, or if anything else would have happened like this, and Urban Meyer was trying to protect him and bring him along, and he was already being subjected to criticism that he could see through social media and television, radio, etc., I could see that more so than this being 4 years into his career as a redshirt freshman or a redshirt senior. And hopefully for him, I think some people will laugh when I make this statement that maybe he has intention to go to the National Football League. Just that I would hope that Urban Meyer, and again, I'm not inside the relationship to know exactly what the dynamics there are, but just being an outsider, that maybe the better tact would be, not knowing all the facts, would be to have coached him through the process of answering to the media this week as a redshirt senior, somebody who's dealt with the media for years and dealt with a level of criticism. It's not going to be nearly as much as it would be following a loss like they suffered to Oklahoma, but rather than hiding him. Maybe the better tact would have been to coach JT through the process. You with me, Claire?
I think I may have lost you. Hang on. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about it. We
You can
edit.
hear me though?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I could
Oh, I
tell
think I fixed it.
at one
There we
point
go.
through. I could tell at one point through my ramble that you left me, but I just finished up.
That was perfect. I could hear everything you were saying though.
Oh, okay. I probably hesitated at one point because you were gone.
No, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay. No worries. I also apologize if like it looks like I'm like breathing down your neck, just because you talk about weird technical things happening. About 3 days ago, and I checked all my camera settings. Suddenly, the the framing of the
The
shot
viewfinder?
like sized down. Like all of a sudden, instead it
Weird.
used to be like more like that, and now it's
Yeah.
like this. And I checked
That's
the
not bad
settings;
enough.
it's the same thing. I don't like it.
Mine is different because I have to be like, what'd you say? I
Yeah,
need one of
so
those ear horns. All right, so I can pick up from JT Barrett.
yeah, if you care to say anything else about JT.
Absolutely. And I will add, even, you and I are both parents. From a parenting standpoint, that sometimes you have to let your kids go out there and experience things. And JT Barrett will have to answer to the media if he wants to go to the next level. He's going to have to take a barrage of questions that he might not like. And this is an Ohio State press conference. This is Ohio State reporters asking him questions. This isn't, just general, the general public or the trolls on social media. These are friendly reporters that have really softball questions that they're going to be asking. And that's not any take back from the reporters. That's just everyone is really respectful. And I don't think anyone was going to be grilling JT. And again, we're not there, but even from a psychology standpoint, I think it would have been better for him to go through that fire, answer those questions, come out as confident, and then move on. But like we said, knowing the outcome now of the game and knowing that he looked more confident, he looked better, maybe Urban's decision was the right one.
There were a couple passes that JT threw that I was glad just to see him just kind of let her rip and let it go. They weren't long throws, but medium range throws that over the last few years we've come accustomed to seeing him just kind of like push out there and just I'll try to get it to the guy versus him just cutting loose and just he let her rip. He doesn't have a cannon, but he let it go about as well as he does, and he threw the ball with confidence.
He absolutely did. It does worry me a little bit on these bubble screens and these swing passes when there's not enough zip on it. And again, it's just from my standpoint, it just looks like it's floating out there forever. And it might just be me completely worried. But there were a couple times that they were lucky to get away with that. And I was like, oh, is this Army or is this really, did he put enough on the ball? So I agree. It's something that they can work towards, build confidence, and obviously that stretches the field.
Talking Ohio State football with Claire Crawford from theozone.net. And of course, she is the co-host with Joe Dexter of the podcast Oh Hail No. And we enjoy talking Ohio State football with Claire. Claire, I've got one word for you. Tough.
Tough as nails. His nickname, Mr. Tuf Borland, is the White Rhino. I
Fill us
don't want to
in,
know where it
or you
came
can't.
from, but it's fitting in my opinion. Tuf Borland stepped in for Chris Worley. Chris Worley has got a sprained foot, and Tuf stepped in at that Mike linebacker position and really, granted he had a veritable cornucopia of opportunities with the triple option for him to make a play. But he played tough assignment football, and we heard his name called out plenty of times. he looked like someone very disciplined, very fast, very aggressive. And I think as far as filling in for Chris Worley, it definitely seems like he has an opportunity to compete for the position. And I think it was Paul Keels and Jim Lachey talking about how it reminded them of when Bobby Carpenter broke his ankle and they got to see James Laurinaitis step in and be the birth of James Laurinaitis. So I think it would be amazing. Redshirt sophomore, Tuf Borland, for him to go on and make an impact and fight for his job.
Yeah, for some reason, I was making comparisons to Justin Boren, the brother of Zach Boren, Zach the fullback, and Justin the linebacker. Also, John Simon came to mind. Now, I'm not going to
Yes.
compare Tuf Borland after one significant game to John Simon, who may also still be playing in the NFL, but at least put a 3 to 4 to 5 year career in the NFL together after being like first team All Big Ten, one of the best defenders in Ohio State history, or at least recent history, and one of the main cogs in that 12-0 team in 2012. But he just kind of had that look and that feel to his play that he was just, as you say, tough as nails. So it's the name is apropos.
It's perfect. You've got to name your kids. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And there's no reason to mess around with U's and G's and H's. Just TUF, tough.
TUF. Nope. He doesn't have time for the extra F.
I was glad to see J.K. Dobbins only carry the ball 13 times. I had mentioned in the previous game, no, it was the Indiana game, of course, where he had 29 carries, that I thought that workload would be too much over the long haul. Of course, the more difficult games in conference are coming. J.K. did a whole lot with that 13 carries for $172 and that tremendous touchdown run that he had, and other runs where it was just, it's becoming classic JK. It's only been 3 games, but there's a, it's like, well, there's a classic JK run because it looks a certain way. He slips past guys and he stutter steps and he leaves guys on their knees, like whiffing at air. It's great to watch.
He has become someone that we hoped he was, and I think then some. JK has become now what we see as special on a team of elite players. We see someone that's really, really standing out. And I honestly think it's great for Mike Weber as far as from a healing standpoint. He did have a few carries on the day. Antonio Williams did as well. Like you said, saving some miles for J.K. Dobbins. And we're going to see a lot more of J.K. Dobbins next week against UNLV. Their rush defense is absolute garbage. So JK is going to have a day, I believe, this coming Saturday against UNLV. But it's definitely, he's somebody that's really special. And again, it was one of those, either a swing pass or on the bubble screen, where there was a safety that had blitzed and had him dead to rights at the ankles and just shucked him off. And off he went and had what we saw out of JK was plenty of yards after catch. We saw him playing aggressive. We saw him really, again, with patience and hitting the hole on time. And I was just, overall, it strengthened the bond of what I knew about JK.
Yeah, so big rivalry game coming up this week, UNLV, Ohio State. The only history I can find here, I can remember back in 1990, Jimmy Jackson and the boys taking on the Runnin' Rebs there in the second round of the NCAA tournament, and that was one of the great teams in college basketball history. And the Buckeyes actually gave them their most difficult game, a 5-point game in their NCAA tournament run. They beat Duke by 30 points in the championship game. Okay, back to football. I see that they've only thrown the ball 37 times in 2 games, so not necessarily another test for the Ohio State secondary, but we'll just look for more of the same, Claire, I guess, in regards to Ohio State's improvement on offense and really locking things down on defense. And this is a team that they should beat by anywhere from 4 to 6 or 7 touchdowns.
I want to say it's like 39.1 Vegas for Vegas. They are are saying it looks like almost 40 points for the spread. So I can see the Buckeyes covering that, especially building off of what happened versus Army.
Claire Crawford. Oh, hail no. That's her podcast with Joe Dexter. Please join her there. You can find it on the ozone.net. Claire, we always love the discussion. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.